hearing, of course, both Harold Magnus and Eric, and Harold Magnus's comments about this industry being bipolar. Perhaps the next time we should call this the Offshore Agenda Bipolar Conference, okay? Because obviously these are some very challenging times that one can get very depressed about unless one listens to our two keynotes who are much more optimistic in the long term in terms of the use of fossil fuel. Where I want to begin is in the mini film that we saw before the two keynotes. Torstein Sanas from Lundin Petroleum suggested that the current fluctuations in the oil price will not have a long-term effect on the industry. Agree or disagree, Eric? Yeah.
I don't think the current fluctuations in itself will have a long-term impact. They seldom do. The prices fluctuate up and down. And in fact, as I said, I think that our behavior, both on the supply and the demand side, to the current low oil prices might in fact lead to higher oil prices 4 or 5 years down the road than we otherwise would have seen. Because we're going to cut down on supply and the Chinese and the Americans are going to increase their demand. So that impact might lead to higher prices in 2020 than we otherwise would have. See?
Yeah, Carl.
I think I agree with Eric. I don't think the fluctuations for the time being will be the most affecting. And that the rising demand from China and India will, we believe, a lot of energy in the years to come.
If you look at the activity intensity on the oil production ahead, it's much higher than it was in the past because the fields are getting older and they're getting deeper water and more challenging subsurface where we need to frack or need steam, etc. So the cost for the marginal producer will come up. So I think that the oil price in the long term would be higher. And that's a problem for the oil industry because, of course, then it's not able to compete with other energy sources.
Harold Magnus, from your charts, it would suggest that this is a temporary phenomenon.
Well, it's not temporary that prices will move up and down because they will do all the time due to the mechanisms how this market works. But I think the main thing is still that the times are changing in a sense that the focus is now much more on renewables, on new technology than we have ever seen before. And capitalism is now taking care of it in another way. It's not dependent on, it's still dependent on policies, but not as much as before. We have sort of a tipping point, and when things then change, they might change more rapidly than we can foresee, especially the ones of us who have both foots in the old market.
Nevertheless, as you pointed out, if you look at solar in terms of global, it's only 0.2%, minuscule. What I'm hearing here, and Paul, I'd like to get your perspective, and Nina, your perspective here, is, we've been through this before in a sense. We've always seen these cycles. Look at future energy demand. Look at the population growth. Look at the rise in the number of people who have cars, so on and so forth. And in the long term, we're all going to be okay in terms of energy demand. Is there a danger in making these kind of assumptions? Because I know it's your feeling that if it's business as usual for the oil industry, they're going to phase themselves out. Nina.
Yes, and I feel this way quite strongly. And obviously, the dropping oil prices have had huge impacts on the industry as such, but it's also influencing the markets, the way that money is currently being invested. And of course, increasingly, it's not only the environmentalists talking about climate change and the changing energy markets, but increasingly leading financial analysts and the oil industry and others in the energy sector are also awakening to the fact that, yes, the energy markets will be changing rapidly and it will impact on the oil and gas industry.
And I think, if you really look at how much oil is coming from the ocean and is going to come from the ocean, it's going to be these technology changes that could rapidly change the situation and the mix in several directions. For oil and gas, we could get some changes on the upside. If we have some major environmental problems, it actually could really impact how things are going forward due to societal pressures to reduce the use of offshore fossil fuels. And the other technology side that really is a huge potential is the renewables from ocean energy. An incredible potential out there in terms of wave, tidal, current energy that just hasn't been realized because the technology hasn't quite come to bear.
No, I agree from fully with the fact that what's happening now on the electricity side and in the renewable energy side is going to have a large impact on both, in particular on electricity markets, which is different than energy markets. And we have to remember that renewables is electricity. 20% of the overall energy use today is electricity. In a low carbon society, we might go to 40% of the overall energy use being electricity, but we still need energy. We still need backup. That's fundamentally a cost. Because it's not, the sun is shining, 12 hours a day on average all over the world the whole year. It's not shining in at night. So we'll have to handle that. And fundamentally also one unanswered question is the business model for renewables where the revenue stream is cannibalized by the next solar panel, because your revenues are zero when you produce electricity, because it's free to produce. So the costs are coming down, but nobody knows where the revenues are going to come from unless we regulate it, have long-term contracts with governments, etc. So it's going to be big, but we still need 70 to 80 million barrels of oil in 2040, even if the car fleet in all of OECD, 65% of it's electric.
Do we need that much?
I would say no, but of course oil and gas will be important for still decades to come as part of the energy mix. But WWF and other analysts have shown that the world can be 100% renewable by 2050, and that's with existing technology and with increasing energy demands. So I think the oil industry is fooling themselves if they think that they will not, in the long run, be outcompeted by renewables.
Would you make that bet?
I'm not sure of the timing, but as I said, the tide has, in a sense, changed.
We're at a tipping point, you said.
Yeah, in the sense that capital is coming into these markets, and of course, tons of money have been lost, especially in Germany, where they have funded the solar revolution, in a sense. And I listened to the state secretary in the energy department in Germany some weeks ago, but at the same also energy forum, saying that they have spoiled a lot of money, but they have learned how to do it, and now they're not dependent on the policies, on subsidies anymore. But still, as you said, Eric, the business model is completely unknown, and it will be changed. But still, people are recognizing now that the future is not in oil and gas as we thought it was some years ago. But it doesn't mean that it will go away.
Go ahead,
of course not.
Renewables will be an essential part of the energy mix, of course. But still, coal is the great challenge for the environment. And Norwegian natural gas are able to replace the use of coal, for example, in Europe. Today, use of coal is increasing, for example, in Germany. For every unit of coal we can substitute with natural gas, the climate or the climate gas emissions would be reduced to the half. So the main challenge is to reduce the use of coal, and the answer for that question is to increase the use of natural gas.